At 4:15 a.m. on December 14, 1944, the Ardennes forest was a cathedral of frozen pine and suffocating silence. Oberleutnant Hans Gerber adjusted his wool collar, his breath hitching in the sub-zero air. To his left, Gefreiter Klaus Meyer shifted his MG-42, confident in the tactical blind spot they were traversing. They were moving through a dead zone, a topographical fold where American machine guns, tethered to the rigid geometry of Army field manuals, simply could not reach. Gerber looked at his watch. He felt the cold, but he felt no fear. He was a professional. He was safe. In the next 110 seconds, he and every man in his patrol would be dead. The contrast was absolute. While the Germans marched with the upright posture of victors, Private Silas Thorne was buried in a shallow scrape of frozen mud 350 yards away. He was shivering so violently his teeth ached, smelling of wet canvas, stale tobacco, and the metallic tang of gun oil. He wasn't looking through his sights. He was feeling the vibrations of the forest floor. He was clutching a weapon he had technically sabotaged, an M1919 Browning that now bore the jagged scars of a civilian's tool. What happened next flipped doctrine on its head. It was a maneuver explicitly forbidden by high command, a civilian corruption of military hardware that turned a standard-issue machine gun into a precision instrument of anatomy. Before the draft board called his name, Silas Thorne didn't care about ballistics or the art of war. He was a master carpenter from the rugged timberlands of Oregon, a man who lived by the rule of the plumb line and the bite of the crosscut saw. In the woods, Silas had learned a fundamental truth that West Point strategists often forgot. Nature doesn't work in straight lines. He spent his youth thinking in angles, understanding how a single notch in a load-bearing beam could redirect thousands of pounds of pressure. He understood the give of Douglas fir and the way a surface's grain dictated the path of a tool. To Silas, the world wasn't made of tactical maps. It was made of joints, levers, and stress points. When he enlisted, his instructors at Fort Benning were visibly frustrated. Silas didn't hold his rifle with the stiff, parade ground posture the Army demanded. He was caught more than once in the armory using a hand file to smooth out the trigger groups of his squad's weapons, trying to give them the fluidity of a well-oiled lathe. To the tactical purists, Silas was a liability, an unpolished laborer who didn't understand that the manual was written in blood. They saw a tinkerer. They didn't see the mechanical genius hidden under a layer of Oregon sawdust. The tactical problem was a geographical nightmare, nicknamed the Hump. It was a limestone ridge that sat directly between the American foxholes and the only viable German approach path. According to Field Manual 23-55, a machine gun's grazing fire, the cone of lead that stays parallel to the ground, would either slam into the front of the ridge or sail harmlessly over the heads of anyone behind it. The Germans knew this dead zone existed. They used it as a corridor to bypass American lines every night, mocking the official American defenses. The cost of following official methods was written in the snow. Corporal Leo Miller, 22, from Brooklyn. He tried to walk his fire over the ridge using the standard elevation dials. The slow, clicking adjustments were too imprecise. He was spotted by a German mortar team before he could find his mark. He left behind a 6-year-old daughter who would keep his last letter, unopened and yellowed, for 60 years. PFC Ray Vance, 19, an Ohio farm boy. He died in a desperate bayonet charge ordered by an officer who believed spirit could overcome the laws of physics. Ray never got to drive the new Ford tractor his father had bought for his homecoming. Captain Sterling, a man with polished jump boots and a rigid obsession with the book, refused to hear Silas's suggestions. When Silas proposed a field modification to the gun's tripod, Sterling threatened him with a court-martial for willful destruction of government property. To Sterling, the manual was the word of God. To Silas, the manual was a death sentence. Silas watched the ridge through the gray dawn. He didn't see a tactical obstacle. He saw a staircase. He realized that if he could create a mechanical stutter in the gun's elevation, he could skip bullets off the frozen crest of the ridge like stones across a pond, dropping them directly into the safe zone. That night, Silas went rogue. While the rest of the platoon slept, Silas huddled under a poncho with a stolen jeweler's file and a flashlight. Using civilian logic, he began to modify the traversing and elevating mechanism of his M1919. He didn't just file it smooth, he filed 12 distinct jagged notches into the brass elevating screw. It was the Sawtooth modification. Each notch was calculated to a fraction of a millimeter. Each one represented a specific drop in trajectory. He was bypassing the factory-set increments of the U.S. Army. He was building a mechanical sequence of death that no reconnaissance officer could have dreamed of. He worked by touch alone, his calloused carpenter's hands feeling the micron-thin shavings of metal fall away as he tuned a weapon of war like a fine piece of cabinetry. The air in the Ardennes felt like glass. Silas could smell the fermented corn from a nearby shottered silo. He heard the rhythmic crunch-crunch of German jackboots. Oberleutnant Gerber entered the kill zone, 350 yards out, his silhouette sharp against the snow. Silas didn't aim with his eyes. He set the gun into the first Sawtooth notch, 43 degrees downward, 14 inches off the crest. He exhaled halfway, held his breath, squeezed. The M1919 bucked. Thud, thud, thud. Silas didn't sweep the gun. He let the notches do the work. With every burst, the violent vibration of the recoil caused the mechanism to seat itself into the next filed tooth. The fire didn't just spray, it stepped. It walked down the hidden reverse slope of the ridge with mathematical certainty. The first burst caught Gerber square in the chest, his superior position evaporating in a spray of crimson. The second burst found Gefreiter Meyer, severing the strop of his helmet before it tore through his throat. The third and fourth bursts found the rest of the patrol diving for cover in a safe zone that had suddenly become a meat grinder. Short, punchy, lethal, the Sawtooth was singing a song of Oregon timber. In 110 seconds, the barrel was smoking, the brass was piled in a golden mound, and the 12-man patrol had been erased from the German roll call. The Sawtooth modification saved the lives of the entire 3rd Platoon that morning. 12 elite enemy combatants were neutralized without a single American casualty. In the weeks that followed, word of the Thorn Notch spread through the foxholes of the 101st. It became an improvisational staple for gunners facing the uneven terrain of the European theater. Eventually, the Army did incorporate mechanical stops into later tripod designs, effectively adopting Silas's unorthodox geometry into official doctrine. But they never mentioned the Oregon Carpenter in the credits. They never gave him a medal for his vandalism. To the Pentagon, it was an evolution of hardware. To Silas, it was just common sense. After the war, Silas Thorne didn't stay in the military. He didn't write a memoir or consult for movie studios. He went back to the Oregon woods, back to the smell of fresh sawdust and the honest math of the grain. He had houses to build. He had trees to fell. He never spoke of the night he used a carpenter's eye to rewrite the rules of war. He simply put his tools back in his belt and went to work. If you found this story compelling, please like this video. Subscribe to stay connected with these untold histories.